for the delay.
We're good? All right, thank you.
Yeah.
We have David?
Yep.
Hey, good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order this meeting of the Board of Selectmen for January 9th, 2018. Our chairman, David Burns, is out sick, but is called in, and he's participating by telephone. David, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you fine, thank you.
Great, thank you. We have to just make an official announcement that pursuant to 940 Code of Mass Regulations, Section 29.10, subsection 2A, remote participation is allowed by the town of Milton. Due to personal illness, David T. Burns is unable to attend in person and will participate remotely via telephone. So, moving on to our agenda, we have no minutes to approve tonight. We have future meeting dates of January 29th, February 12th, February 26th. We have proposed March dates of March 12th and March 26th. So those are a little bit far out. If anyone has a conflict, maybe we can circle back with Emily Martin and reschedule. And we have a joint date for a joint meeting with the planning board that we're trying to schedule for the Falcone development. Is that definite at this point?
It looks to be January 25th.
Okay.
And I will be away, and I've said to Emily, have it, for the purpose of having it. I'm out of the country that week, but I think if you can get a date between both of you to move forward on it,
Okay.
so I'm
Yeah,
fine
the
with
other
that.
option was January 29th, and Attorney Cochran is out of the country on
Okay.
that date, so it looks like January 25th.
Okay, January 25th for the joint meeting then. All right, thank you. Is there anyone here tonight for citizen speak? I see no one coming forward to citizen speak, so we'll move on to, the first item on the agenda is a conference with the Capital Improvement Planning Committee to go over their recommendations. And we have the town accountant and Capital Planning Committee member and former colleague of ours on the board, Tom Hurley.
How's everybody doing?
Actually, before you start, I also want to just mention, Nicholas Hajar is also here with us tonight at the table. Nicholas is a Life Scout in one of the troops in Milton.
Troop 3.
Troop 3.
3.
And is working towards completing another badge eventually to make a step up to Eagle Scout. So hopefully he'll be able to achieve that, and we welcome him tonight. He's very interested in town government and has interviewed us about some town issues in the past, and is going to be here observing tonight and reporting back to his troop about the meeting.
Yep.
So welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is it okay if I go ahead, or?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and then I'll kind of chime in, but.
Okay, so Mr. Hurley and I are here tonight to present the capital recommendation for fiscal 19. For the general fund only, we will present a recommendation for the enterprise funds at a future date. But we wanted to at least present this recommendation to make the ease of the operating budget process and the discussion of free cash to be a little bit more meaningful, and to have where the capital committee stands at this point with that. So with that being said, the general fund capital requests for the 5-year period FY19 through FY23 totaled approximately $94 million. The largest requests included in that 5 years were related to the DPW facility of approximately $30 million in FY23, fire facilities of $30 million in FY23, roadways and sidewalks of approximately $3.7 million per year ongoing, a fire engine for approximately $600,000 in 2023, a recycling and trash program totaling approximately $750,000, and the remaining balance relates to equipment, technology, and town and school facilities. The FY19 requests total approximately $7.6 million. The Capital Improvement Planning Committee is recommending that the town appropriate and fund $5,005,846 for FY19. Of that amount, the recommendation for bonded capital is $3,590,676. The non-bonded recommendation is $1,415,170, recommended to be funded with one-time funds of $1,330,170 of free cash, and $85,000 in excess funds that are presently in the library building project. That is subject to verification that that was not bonded money, so there's still a little bit of work to do with the financial analyst just to confirm that, but I'm pretty confident that that's the case. The library trustees are aware of this recommendation, and once we confirm that, we will ask them to formally vote that at one of their meetings. One of the things that the committee looks at is any technology-related items are assumed to have a useful life between 5 and 7 years. Doesn't make financial sense to bond those items, so that's the main piece of what's being recommended for one-time funds. Also, there's some requests that are more upgrades, repairs, maintenance in nature. Those also are not ideal candidates for bonding, so those are also recommended as one-time funding items. What was not recommended for funding just due to financial constraints is approximately $2.6 million in roadway construction per year. So the request is $3.6 million in order to fit things into the financial model that the capital committee uses to plan. The recommendation includes $1 million in roadways and $100,000 a year for sidewalks. Other than that, this recommendation pretty much, it funds what was requested for 19. In the event that this recommendation is put forward and approved by town meeting, it will result in a debt service ratio of approximately 2.7% of revenues in FY20, or 2.63% average over the 5-year period. This recommendation will also result in a capital commitment as a percentage of revenue of roughly 3 to 4% per year throughout the 5-year plan
Of the total budget, of the total town budget?
of the revenue.
Capital budget.
Well, the total
Revenue.
assessment, right? It's not the
Yeah,
total-
the levy.
Yeah, it's total tax levy.
Okay.
Yeah, that was done a few years ago. We originally proposed, when we were doing this, of doing a percentage of the total revenue estimate and trying to, one concern we had a number of years ago, that I had a number of years ago, was we were starting to lose debt service, and as you lose it, it creeps into the operating budget. So there was an attempt to say, let's just, draw a line in the sand right here and at least try and keep it level. So that's where originally we had I think a 1.9% of the total tax levy, which was where it was at the time. So as the tax levy goes up, the ability to carry more debt service goes up with it. We also, and let me pass these out, because this is a giant spreadsheet that we kind of load up just to kind of see where we stand. We put all the capital projects for all 5 years on it. There's a debt service schedule which we can plug in interest rates into it, the life of the bonds, and it will calculate the amortization schedule, bring it back to this. Yeah.
I think that was
That's a
also in
little
your
bit out of date,
packet.
but,
I think there was also, this
Okay.
was also included
Okay.
in the packet that I.
okay, good.
Okay, this is on my computer. I got one right now.
So it's, the one I just passed out is probably a little bit, but the same idea. So this year we said, the other thing we don't talk about, we're talking about debt service, but we're not talking about a total capital commitment. So this year we started talking about what should the total capital, commitment be as a percentage of the budget. Most towns do. Arlington's been kind of the poster child for capital planning over the years. They use 5%. 5% of their operating budget goes to capital. Whether it's one-time money, whether it's built in, but it's 5% every year. So we didn't think we could get to 5, but we've kind of, in this budget, said, can we do 4? So this model, as you read across the bottom, shows you a total capital commitment as a percentage. It says of revenue, but it's really the tax levy. 4.5%, 4.5. Actually, it's a little bit lower on the new one. 3.7, 4.1, 3.6. So that's basically saying, okay, how much free cash do we have? we'd like to see that eventually work into the operating budget, so it's not just free cash, because you never know what free cash is gonna be, but
Right,
it definitely should be a real commitment to capital projects. So that's one thing I wanted to get across. The other thing is, we're charged, and Mike Denny did a great job in terms of kind of pulling the town side together, and we kind of said this year's a little bit of a push because we've got a new DPW director, and schools and DPW are 90% of the capital needs. So the capital plan changed, but the problem is when we look at a 5-year capital plan, and what we've been struggling with for over the years when I've been on the committee is it's a moving target. And I prepared a spreadsheet actually comparing the 2019 through 2022 requests that were put in fiscal year 18 compared with the requests that were put in fiscal year 19. And it's like looking at two different, they're not even close. So how can you prepare a capital plan for 5 years when the capital needs keep changing? So we're kind of committed next year on the capital committee to saying, okay, let's start here. If you bring us a capital project within the 5-year plan that wasn't on last year's capital plan, then you've got to justify it to us. We don't want something popping up in the middle. We also don't want to see 50% increases in 1 year between, because we've seen that too. It goes in, it might go in for a big number 1 year and then it drops in half the next year, or vice versa. And so we're going to make a commitment to try and get that as more stable so that we really can do a full 5-year plan. I think that's going to, with the town administrator involved in the process, I think that will help. Because I think part of the problem is a lot of the department heads, the capital plan kind of becomes an afterthought.
Right.
So, and nobody looks back at last year's, they just kind of look
What do I
around
need
the
this
office
year,
and what do
right.
I need this year?
Yeah.
And it really shouldn't be like that. So,
And if I could just add one other thing briefly, I just want to say that the process this year went extremely well. With the new Strong Town Administrator legislation, the process was changed in that Mr. Dennehy presented to the Capital Committee the initial capital recommendation from, the the leadership
Outside.
team. And that really streamlined the process because he was able to come in and present the overall request, the overall plan. We had representation from the schools who came in and talked in detail about the school-specific requests. And then the capital committee invited in some of those larger departments like the DPW. So we didn't have the need to bring in all of the department heads and have, a ton of meetings because Michael did that during the day with department heads and boards and committees, and then the schools came in separately. So the whole process went extremely well. I know that several of the members commended Mr. Dennehy on how much better that whole process worked. So I just wanted to note that because I think it was a huge step in the right direction.
That's good news.
I agree.
If I can add just one more thing, yeah, it was a very collective process. The people on that committee are very dedicated and focused. We started off by actually, one of the committee members actually asked where we were with last year's projects, which I thought was a great stepping stone into what's going on, because some of the projects either haven't been put out to bid or they were still working on the bids. Some of them are seasonal type work, the tennis courts down at Kelly Field. There's a very small window with which you can put that out to bid because the high school's using them in the fall and then they use them again. So, due diligence by that board, and each member on that committee should be commended. All the questions that they asked myself and the subject matter experts were spot on. Should we bond this? This is something that one-time capital free cash that we might be able to use. So hats off to this group. It was a very thorough process, and I think if you look at this, you'll see it's pretty spread out. throughout the town. Each of the departments get actually what they were looking for, and we were able to figure out, they were able to figure out the best way to come up with funding all these mechanisms, so very, very good process from where I sat.
Yeah, when you think about it too, where we were probably 8 or 10 years ago of not even having a capital committee that met, and having, a couple of years when there was just no commitment to capital at all in the operating budget. And to Amy's credit, when she took over the reins of the capital committee, it really started moving in the right direction.
Go ahead.
You took the words out of my mouth, because for as long as I can remember, especially under Chief Murren when I was his administrative deputy, there just was no capital money. And if you were lucky to even get a capital project moved forward,
Right.
it was like hitting the lottery. It was just, and then in the past few, and you talk about the 1.9, I remember when you did that, when you made that move to commit that money, it was like the first big step towards capital monies every year, dealing with the capital infrastructure of this community. And the other thing that makes, and when you start talking about the fluctuation is that prior to this year, at least the past 4 years, with the level dollar budgets and the non-contingents and the contingents and the one-time wish list, you had department heads trying to figure how am I gonna find a way to fund things which were really critical.
Yep,
So
yep.
I think you've taken this leaps and bounds, especially for me, coming from from the operational side, that in the long term, for the community as a whole, that it's really the smart way to do this.
Thank you.
Smart way to do it.
Yeah, one other thing to note on this is the first year that we're using the new limit. In prior years, any project or purchase over $10,000 with a 5-year life was considered a
Right.
capital request. So
Now it's
town
25.
meeting revised that to 25,000. That was a big help. So you will see some one-time requests when the operating budget's rolled out, but nothing too significant. I think department heads are really trying to manage their budgets and trying to come up with some creative ways to fund some of that other stuff,
Right.
so.
And we're hoping that'll get more of the repair kind of stuff that's been creeping into the capital plan, back into the operating budgets.
What happens to that 85,000, the library money, if it is bonded money?
So, we will have to go back and revise the recommendation.
Will you be prohibited from using it then, for this?
If it's bonded money, yes.
Okay.
But what happens, similar to the school building project, is the library project had a total appropriation and a bonding authorization to match that appropriation. What happens with those big projects is they go out and bond the money, and then they get gifts, grants, and stuff after it's bonded. So first in, you use the bonded money first. So I'm pretty certain that
What's left over is
what's
grant
left in there is related to gifts or grants, and it's probably close to 300,000, but at this point, they have some other ideas on the horizon that they're thinking that once we prove this, which I just haven't had the time to meet with the financial advisor. I did have one conversation with her on the phone, and she felt pretty comfortable too. We just have to sit down and just really go through the numbers just to make sure. But in the event that that assumption is inaccurate, we'll go back and we'll revise the recommendation. And we might have to drop something off or shift how things are funded, but,
Thank you. Thanks, Kate.
Could one of you just give us a little more detail on two of the big items on page one? One is the Squantum and Adams Street signalization and roadway construction. It's $1 million. Are we looking at one or two big road projects, or is this just a lot of smaller street projects that DPW will
Okay,
prioritize?
the roadway is paving primarily, and it will go along with the Chapter 90 money and just be put into use based upon the
The
roadway.
DPW list, okay.
The $1.8 million, $1.18 million is a newer project, but actually it is a new project for just signalization down at, which is desperately needed. I think we all agree that it is.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of this one. Is this one that the Traffic Commission has already recommended? I don't,
no. So
I just
what-
don't, this seemed new to me. I don't remember us talking about this one.
So what the the deal with this is there was some kind of study, I don't know if I mentioned it in here. There was a study done a few years ago that identified certain intersections that needed signalization, and this is the only one that hasn't been done. They are seeking state funding on this, but in order to have a better chance at securing any type of state grant, you have to have an approved project. And this was, from some of the members on the capital committee felt that the original request was for some design and then the significant money in the next year, but in order to secure, is it TIP money?
TIP, yeah.
TIP
Yep.
money, that you need to have the total appropriation for the state to consider
So,
it.
so the plan on this, even though we're requesting to be authorized as a capital project in 19, other than some planning money in 19, there won't be any construction money until probably 2021 or 22.
At that location?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it either would in the future be approved by, or recommended by the traffic commissioner, or maybe it was in the past and just hasn't been funded
I don't
for
think
it.
so. I don't think the traffic commission has jurisdiction on signalization. It's not, because I don't ever remember having a vote or discussion ever on addition of, it's always been like the DPW, the engineers, MassDOT, those,
Right.
All right, I'm
it
just
will
raising,
go-
it's usually traffic signs and that sort of thing is recommended by the traffic
Yeah,
commission.
the one-way signs.
Yeah,
and that
okay.
kind of stop signs and whatnot, but.
All right, and then just on page 2, this is a much smaller item, but $28,000 gutter replacement for the cemetery, is that just an abbreviated description? Is there actually more than gutter replacement, or is it really
It's
28,000 for gutter
gutters and
replacement?
fascia boards, there, I guess, that house was just repainted. And,
So there's probably a little bit more
so,
residential gutters.
yeah, there's a lot of rotted fascia boards on,
Okay.
soffits, I guess, that will be replaced as well.
They're
as
wood
the-
gutters
And,
as
yeah,
well.
and they want to
Yeah.
do it with wooden
Oh,
gutters.
okay.
which-
For
The
the
original wood
historical,
gutters.
Okay.
Yeah.
to maintain the historical nature of the house. And the cemetery funded the painting of the house from their other special revenue funds.
So does anyone have any other comments or questions on the capital
David?
budget? David, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm fine with those, thank you.
The other thing I might want to call your attention is the recycling carts, because that is a new, I'm sure you probably talked about it
Talked
here,
about
but,
it.
Yeah.
I think it's a move in the right direction.
Yeah, and we're seeking a small grant for that.
Small grant we've applied for with the recycling partnership, but
Yeah.
the idea is if town meeting approves it, each residence in the town will get a 64-gallon wheeled, lidded cart. The idea is to make it more convenient for people to recycle. It's containerized, it won't blow around. See a lot of the small bins, like these ones here in Town Hall, that are heaved over, and, you know, a windy day like today, and half of the debris ends up the street, so.
Chance at finding my recycle bin in the winter.
Right.
It's buried right now.
I bought one in Curry. They're $85, the
Right.
ones I got, but best investment, as far as recycling, smartest thing I ever did. You don't chase it, it doesn't move, it doesn't.
I got a 30-gallon trash can, and I can't see it. It's buried.
Right.
There's 3 feet of snow on top of it. So,
And operationally and economically, it's $60 more per ton for solid waste and trash than it is for recycling. So it's time we make it more convenient for our residents to recycle more. Most of these bins you see are about 25 gallons, so you're looking at, 2.5 times more stuff. It's containerized.
Yep.
Program like this you can roll out in 2 weeks' time. So if approved,
Yeah, I think it's a
we could
great
have the
idea.
whole town done in 2 weeks, so.
Because I've noticed most people fill their recycling
Oh, yeah.
more so than their trash even, so.
Especially this time of year.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we have no other discussion, do we want to make a motion? Do you want to make a motion, Richard?
Yes, so, I'll make excuse me, make a motion to approve the recommendations from the Capital Improvement Planning Committee from its January 5th, 2018 memo as presented to us here tonight.
Great, okay.
You just-
Any discussion? All in
Good.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Actually,
Thank you all.
we need to do a roll call vote with somebody on the
Yes,
phone.
you're supposed to,
We want
yes.
to, okay, so Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, so we'll have to do that for all motions tonight. Okay, thank you both very much. Tom,
Thank
we
you.
did have you
Thank
on
you.
for number 6, but that's going to be deferred
I heard.
Yeah.
about the legislation to a future date.
Okay.
So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Please thank the committee.
All right, number 7 on our agenda is a conference with the town clerk, Susan Galvin, regarding new voting machines. So Susan. Good evening, Susan. Good evening. Thanks for
Madam
coming in and
Clerk.
joining us tonight.
Thanks
How
for
are you?
having me. I don't very often get to come, so
All right.
it's my pleasure to be here.
Do you want to give us a little background on this?
Sure. So back in May of 2014, Secretary issued orders for new voting machines in the Commonwealth. 2 were approved by him. And so our machines are no longer manufactured. We have AccuVote machines currently. They're about 13 years old. They still work. However, the repairs aren't there, and fearful that, given past history, that we needed to look at the new machines. Presented it in my budget last year to the Capitol. It was approved at town meeting, and so I am here. So the bidding process did occur, and as I said, there were only 2 authorized vendors. About 10,000 difference in price. We did go with the lower bid, which is from LHS, our current vendor that we use for the AccuVote machines. They're stellar in performance of service, meeting our needs. They're fairly local. They're in New Hampshire, and they're very responsive anytime we've ever had any problems. So I'm really pleased that we are using them. Not to say that the other company isn't a very good company. We use them for our handicap voting machines. So I feel really good about it, and I hope our residents will be happy with it. I've heard really good things from other communities that have used them. It provides a better viewing option for voters when they put their ballots in. It explains if for some reason your ballot is rejected, it'll tell them why. They still would have to look at their ballot and see for themselves, but it'll give a reason. So,
Okay, that
that is
sounds
why I'm
good.
here.
So they'll still fill out the ballot by hand and then feed it into this
Correct.
machine?
Correct, yeah.
When do you anticipate using them? I heard Secretary Galvin come out and said the primary will be the day after Labor Day?
It will.
Right.
So we're going to use it in our April election.
April, okay.
Yeah, so that's why I'm here, because
Nice.
it is required that 60 days prior to our first use, the Board of Selectmen has to authorize that for all elections and primaries going forward.
Motion?
Okay, yes, why don't we
Thank
do
you,
the
Susan.
motion?
I'll make a motion in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 54, Section 34. The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Milton hereby authorizes the discontinuance of the AccuVote tabulator and authorizes the use of the ImageCast precinct tabulator at all Town of Milton precincts for all primaries, preliminary elections, and elections held in the Town of Milton until otherwise ordered by vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Okay, the motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm
Aye.
sorry, roll call. Mr. Burns?
Yes.
And Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, next on our agenda is a conference with Therese Desmond from the Animal Shelter Building Committee.
Hi there.
Good evening, Therese.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have some papers to give out, so why don't I do
great.
that first, so this will be in front of you. I'm not sure if I have it for you. This is a pre-schematic for the building, and...
Do you happen to have an extra?
I've seen it. I've already seen it, so you can give,
Why don't we,
One to
yeah,
Nicholas.
why don't you
Yeah.
take that?
Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
you
We
go.
can
Hey,
share
Kitty.
one.
We got Sharon here.
This is the one that was on the wall here. This was on the wall downstairs here?
There was 1 and 2 that was on the wall, yeah.
All right, I'm good. All right, Katie, go
There
ahead.
were
We
2
got it.
schematics.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Mike Dennehy asked if I would stop in as co-chair of the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee to update you on the status of the project My co-chair, Dan Daly, unfortunately couldn't make it here tonight. But I would like to say that about the committee, they're really a great group of very intelligent and talented and dedicated individuals who have been working very hard to make sure this project keeps moving along. And we have gone through the site selection and written the request for proposals and had selected the architects, civil engineer, and civil engineer is pending. So it's moving. We have a pre-schematic design that the architect has presented. The programming phase has ended, and the Milton Animal League is really happy with what the building includes. Includes everything they need for now and into the future, which is very important. And the building itself has a lot of light. It will contain different program elements, such as a surgery room, a garage in which the animal control officer can pull in. If she has an animal in the car, she doesn't have to try to
Carry it in.
carry him in from outside. There will be a meeting room, as you can see on the south side of the building, that has a separate entrance that will be used in the winter for training dogs and for different programs that they can work with other communities on. That room can be used for different committees and departments if they want to have an event or a meeting or a training session. So that's something that will be of benefit to the town as well. The difference between the program square foot and the schematic square foot is just a matter of what they wanted in the programming. Once you have all these rooms, you also have to put in hallways. That makes it a little bit bigger. There are solar panels on the roof, and as I said, there's a lot of light. This particular company, which I think you've already reviewed and, you know, because you signed the contract with them, have specialized in animal shelter design, and they have a few designs that have been completed in this area. Let's see. Our next step is working on tightening up the budget for this project, getting the schematics design phase done, and the siding of the building has been done, but that has to be looked at by a structural engineer and the civil engineers to see how to connect with all the utilities. We're hoping we'll have some construction drawings ready. I cannot give you a date, but one of these days it's going out to bid. But we have to kind of get a better handle on the budget for it.
How long do you think before you could go out to bid?
I was told not to give you a date, because you might hold me to it.
I will.
I'd love to see it go out this fall. I just don't know if that,
This fall of 18?
yes.
At the fall of 18?
Well, I'm just wishful
Okay.
thinking, okay? But as we get closer and these elements start coming together even faster, we'll have a better idea of when we could be breaking ground for it.
Therese, is there any updated cost estimate based on this design?
There is not, that's what we're waiting for.
Okay. As part of after the structural engineering analysis is done?
Well, yes, because we don't know how much it's gonna cost to develop the site.
Okay.
The site, has a lot of changes of grade and this, rock out there, and trees. That's gonna be kind of expensive, I think.
Is the contractor who's awarded the bid going to clear the site, or are we clearing the site?
Well, are you offering?
No, I'm asking. I don't have any machines, you do.
Help out.
I'm just thinking, if this is definitely the site, one thing I'd like to see is if we could at least put erect a sign there that says, this is the place of the future animal shelter for the town of Milton. A lot of people walk up there, a lot of people go up there. I think that a lot of people have started, they know this is coming, I don't know if they know exactly where. I think that just would be, it's winter now, but maybe early spring, if we could get something erected there, this is gonna be this, maybe even a picture of it, like other projects do in
Yeah.
town.
Right, yeah, we could get that made up.
Yep.
I don't know, I think it would be a nice joint project between the DPW, the cemetery. We have an awful lot of fill if that's what's needed, to fill and clear it.
And that would help on the cost, right, the overall cost of the
Right.
project? If
Definitely.
we could get through the town to clear it. I'd just like to see this, you know, the initial gift, as you know, I'm a little familiar with. We're talking many years since that gift was first given to the town. But not just that on need, the current building is so beyond its usefulness and ability to serve the needs of this community. The sooner we can get this going, the happier I'll be anyway.
I think we have an MOA with the Animal League, so that
Right,
probably
right,
governs
right.
the clearing of the, it's been a long time since I've looked at that, but that probably governs who does what in terms of site
For this site here, is it for this
preparation
site
and all
here?
that. Yes. So
Well,
we
wherever they
probably have to look
could
at that
save
again.
money, you know, if everyone could pitch in, it could get done a little more economically. Yes, as you mentioned, the shelter was built in the 70s as a temporary shelter.
Right.
And now it's almost 50 years later, and this temporary shelter is more like a glorified Quonset hut, you know.
I know it is, and it's taken between Bill Ritchie, Mike Harkin from Blue Hill Votech. It's had more Band-Aids put on it to make it still function today. This will be a huge improvement. This will be really something very nice for our community.
I think
so.
a lot of what held it up was trying to find the site that we could use, you know, that they wanted to remain where they were, but
Site
it
number 3.
just wouldn't work out.
Right.
Number 3.
So Teresa, is this, are these drawings that you've given to us, are they fairly final depending on the structural analysis? Or
Yes.
has this been voted by the committee?
It's been voted by the committee, and they don't want any changes. They think everything that's in the program is exactly what they need. And the siting of the building is as far away from the golf course as possible, because that's what we thought we'd do. It's soundproof, so that shouldn't, you know, bother the golfers.
That's right, totally contained.
Right.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Teresa, or anything else you'd like to add, Teresa?
I don't think so at this time, but we'll keep you updated as it moves along, and hopefully it'll start moving along a little faster, and we'll get this done.
How much have you expended on this to get to this point so far, of what you have?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, we were going over the finances last night, and someone couldn't come up with the right number. I can give you that.
You get it to Michael whenever you
Sure.
have time.
It's just been
Doesn't have to be exact, just rough where you're at money-wise.
Okay.
I know what you need, I just want to know where you're at. As you know, I won't say it again, let's move it forward.
okay. We're working as hard as we can, as
Okay.
fast as municipal government moves.
Well, we appreciate all the committee's work.
Thank you,
All right, thank you.
thanks.
Thanks,
for coming
Tracy.
in.
Yeah, thank you.
so much.
There's some
This is great.
ones here. Does anybody else need one?
It looks
David
very
get
Maybe
nice.
Fred,
Take one
I'll
for
get one
David.
for David.
Okay.
Fred or Joel. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you
All right,
much.
the next
Thanks,
item on the
Tracy.
agenda
Thanks, Doris.
relates to a conservation restriction for 245 Highland Street. We did have Attorney Corcoran here. Okay, why don't we defer this then, if he's upstairs at the Board of Appeals?
Okay.
Okay, then, number 10 is a discussion of the Municipal Broadband Committee and the charge of the committee. We have a longer document put forward, I think, by Mr. Chamberlain, who was the person who presented this to us with Mr. Zulus. We also have a one-paragraph proposed charge that we received, which is probably more in keeping with what a traditional charge to a committee would be. In reading this, I thought the shorter charge was good. The only thing that I would add to it, there's a placeholder to be filled in for a date at the end. It seemed to me that we might want to have this committee report to us maybe quarterly or somewhat frequently, because the Comcast license is up for
Right.
renewal later this year. So, and this would relate to the same topic. So it may be a matter of asking this committee to get started on their research and come in, let us know next quarter where they're at, because it may inform the Comcast process.
I'm fine with it. You want to put a date in? You want to insert a date?
Yeah, I would just change the last sentence to say, this report will make recommendations for the consideration of the Board of Selectmen and will, and then change the words to say, report to the Board of Selectmen quarterly,
Okay.
unless anyone has any
I'm fine.
other change.
I'm fine with that. You all right?
David, is
all right
that
with
agreeable?
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well.
And there were a list of names given that we were
There-
gonna...
I did see an earlier list. I don't, are
Yeah.
they on here? on this?
I don't know if it was left, but there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names that I had heard
That
of.
you had forwarded to
Yeah.
us?
I don't think they're in the package tonight.
Do you want to do
have
that
them?
tonight, or you
Yeah.
want to do it at the next meeting?
Well, we could probably do it at the next meeting, probably just come up with a number, how many people you'd like on this committee. I believe there's 5 individuals here who have been,
All right, okay.
And is one of them the one that Mr. Gray gave us? I think he would be 6th, right?
yes, yep.
Okay. They all seem like very qualified candidates to me.
Right.
I'm fine with it. You want to just put it on for the next agenda?
Okay,
and
sure.
We'll vote it then, is that
Yep.
right with
Yeah.
you? Okay.
That's
Great.
What about the charge? Do we want to approve the charge tonight?
Want to do the charge tonight? I'll read
Yeah.
it.
Do you want to? Okay.
So have it.
Is it on for approval? Let's see.
Is it on for approval tonight? Yeah, it says discussion approval.
Okay.
Yep.
I can't hear what David just said.
Yeah, it's on for discussion approval for the charge.
Okay, is David agreeable to that? Did you hear, Emily?
Yeah.
David, are you okay with approving the charge tonight?
Yeah, I agree. I think we should.
So I'll make a motion, this is the proposed charge for the Municipal Broadband Committee. The charge to the committee is to explore the possibility of creating a municipal fiber optic network for the benefit of Milton residents, local business community, nonprofit institutions, and town government. The committee will develop a report surveying a number of broadband development subject areas, including but not limited to such an undertaking's capital cost. This report will make recommendations for consideration to the Board of Selectmen and will report to the board quarterly.
I'll David seconded the motion. Okay, any discussion? Then if not, all in favor, Mr. Burns,
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And Ms. Conlon, yes.
Yes.
So unanimously approved.
I'm going to
All
give
right.
this one to, because it has your,
Yes.
is that all right to Emily?
That's great.
That's the language, okay.
And we'll appoint the committee the next time.
Yep.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is a discussion of the FY19 budget. Why don't we go to the town administrator for this?
Sure, very brief update for those of you that watched the warrant committee last night. They announced their subcommittees. Steve McCurdy was the first email I saw to reach out today, so the subcommittees are reaching out to the department heads to get going on their subcommittee work, with the understanding of Chair Asher and myself that a lot of the work this year would be done through the subcommittees, so that when these groups come in to meet with the warrant committee, most of these questions have been vetted through either through the narrative or questions that were proposed through the subcommittee. So hats off to Chair Asher and the group last night at the warrant committee. They understand what's in front of them. There's a busy couple of weeks trying to get the subcommittees in to meet with these groups. Again, I can't thank the passion and volunteerism from that group. They're ready. Obviously, Mr. McCurdy jumped right in the first day, and he's going to sit down with Mr. Berkeley and myself and work through some of the questions with his subcommittee. And then the idea is to report back on a weekly basis in staggered groups. Obviously, you'd have a big group like DPW, maybe some of your smaller budgets come in. We are attending the Mass Municipal Association next week, week from Friday and Saturday, at which time the governor will reveal a lot of the state and local aid numbers. So we're just waiting for those to plug them in for the revenue side, and we'll forward that along with the approved capital improvement recommendations today and get those in the hands of the warrant committee as quickly as possible so they can work through the top half of the income statement as well as the capital recommendations that were made here tonight. And, obviously, they've got a busy 3 months ahead of them and very productive meeting last night, and groups were tasked and people are starting to reach out, so.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are
Very
we
good.
going to have a presentation at this meeting about, I guess probably after the MMA meeting, about what our revenue projections are looking like even preliminarily and what the gap that we're looking at
Yeah,
is?
that'll be on the 29th.
The
Myself
29th,
and the town
okay.
accountant will come in and plug all those numbers in and see where we stand from an early, probably unbalanced budget at the time, but,
That sounds great.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion on the budget?
I just want to thank the residents again for passing that override, because it makes this year a much easier year to function.
Certainly does.
From a governmental perspective.
All right, we have Attorney Cochran back in the room, so why don't we move back to number 9 on the agenda and ask him to join us at the table for discussion of the 245 Highland Street conservation restriction. Good
Thank
evening,
you very
Ned.
much. Good evening. Ned Corcoran on behalf of Dennis and Martha Burke, who are Dr. Burke, they are the owners of the property at 245 Highland Street. It's the property right at the crown of Highland Street. And I provided you each with a copy of a colored plan. They own a property that's roughly 8 acres. And they had a plan to subdivide the property, and using a traditional subdivision formula, they would have created a 6-lot subdivision with a new road, sort of centered in the property, built to subdivision requirements. When we presented that plan to the planning board about a year and a half ago, planning board requested that we take a look at the cluster alternative under the zoning, and earlier in the year, the town meeting had adopted some amendments to the cluster bylaw that actually made this bylaw workable. I think the cluster bylaw has been on the books since 1970s, but no one had ever filed under the cluster bylaw because there was really no incentive or benefit to do it. So with the modifications, we took a second look and came up with a plan that has 7 lots. This is a Residence A subdivision. Under a normal subdivision, there would be 40,000 square foot house lots. The cluster bylaw provides that you can reduce the size of lots, and based on a separate formula, a 30,000 square foot lot and a certain amount of frontage, you determine how many lots that you can put on the property with an appropriate driveway or roadway. And then you can shrink those lots once you've determined the number. You can shrink those lots further to a minimum of 10,000 square feet so that the lots get clustered and you preserve open space. And the bylaw provides for a minimum amount of open space at 35% of the lot. It also provides for a payment to the Affordable Housing Trust and an amount to be determined by the planning board in its discretion. And so after an interesting set of evenings with the planning board and neighbors, we arrived at this plan, which we think is a far superior plan to a standard subdivision. That the frontage of the property is magnificent trees.
Right.
And to the right of the driveway, a wooded area, some along the wall. There's a historic wall all along the frontage. We managed to do a minor widening to the driveway without cutting a whole new opening in the wall. There's a meadow to the left of the driveway entrance. And there's some interesting trees and other green features all the way around the property. So we basically came up with a plan that takes almost 3 acres around the perimeter of the property and puts that into permanent conservation trust. The conservation trust does allow for sort of passive utility and stormwater uses, so there are stormwater detention system in the property, the utility that's a connection to the sewer, and other things that are in it, but there's no active use of the property. And so, and then there is, the planning board used a formula for determining a payment to the Affordable Housing Trust that you could do 6 lots of right. We're doing a 7th under the special permit. They attributed a value of a new lot in that subdivision at $500,000, which was agreed to by at least one realtor appraiser who testified at the hearing. And they then determined that 10% of that lot would be the value of the payment. So a $50,000 payment to the Affordable Housing Trust associated with the development of these lots to be paid in installments as each of the lots is then sold. Their daughter is now building a house on the first lot to the left, which is Lot 3 on the plan. The Burks themselves live in the main house
Right.
on Lot 6, but they're going to sell that and build a new house on Lot 7, which contains the existing barn, and then they're going to sell the other lots. The road is under construction, the house
I
is...
saw that. The road was.
So the permit was granted by the planning board in April, and we went before, or in March, we went before the the Conservation Commission in April to determine their interest in being the holder of the conservation restriction. They agreed to do that, subject to review of documents by Town Council and the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. The Executive Office of Environmental Affairs has its own form, which they use consistently, and they're responsible for reviewing and approving every conservation restriction that is granted to a municipality on behalf of the state. And I went through a process with them that started with an initial response to my sending in a draft of the conservation restriction with plans and whatnot. And they said, well, we have a 90-day period before we'll be able to start. So this is now May or June. We'll get back to you in September. So first week of September, I got back to them and started to push the ball rolling. It took then through September, October, November, and on December 1, got their review and their stamp of approval on the language of the conservation restriction. I have incorporated into the final version some minor comments that I got from John Flynn over the weekend. John and I spoke Saturday afternoon. He sent me some minor comments that really go to the changing the form of the notary, and things like that that were just formatic and not substantive, so I didn't have to go back to EOEA with any final approval. So we are scheduled to be before the Conservation Commission next Wednesday for their review and approval. So my request this evening is that the board would sign on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. I have a notary stamp with me. I can notarize your signatures. I'll take it next before the Conservation Commission next Wednesday, and get their signatures, and then deliver it into the Secretary of Environmental Affairs for their final review and signature, and then record it. So it'll be a recorded document. Ultimately, I think the fee, the underlying ownership of the property will be conveyed from the Burkes to the homeowners association that will own the road and the infrastructure. It will own the fee in the ground, subject to the conditions that are contained in the CR. And they'll be the responsible party for maintaining and policing activities that go on. So, for example, when people mow their lawn, they're not allowed to deposit their clippings within the conservation area. They have to really protect it. So it's been an interesting sort of new process to engage in, but I think we've come to a really good outcome. I think the Burkes are really pleased with the outcome. I think they feel like they're making a good and significant contribution to the town. They're certainly getting benefit as well, but they chose a path and a process that I think that does more in terms of good and response to the town's requests, as opposed to simply creating a cookie cutter subdivision and running through with it. So with that, I'll open up to any questions that you have. I appreciate your time.
Do you have any comments or questions? And Ned, I forgot to mention when you came in, but our chairman, David Burns, is on the phone because he's out due to an illness, but he's here by telephone, so he may have a
bless you,
question or
David.
comment for you. It's going to be a little hard for him to sign, so we may have to arrange for that after the
I think I only need a
fact.
majority of signatures.
Okay,
According to
Okay.
town council, and that's really the notary,
Okay.
that's one of the changes that was made to the notary line.
okay, great. So do we have questions or comments for Ned?
I just have two. So the size of this, I'm familiar with the property. Is this about the same footprint as what was Our Lady's Hall, which is now Fletcher Steel? Is it similar in size?
Similar in size, yeah.
And there was no such conservation restriction or benefit to the town from when that was sold and that was developed? Or
That's
was-
right. When that was developed, it was developed as a standard subdivision. I think one of the lots, there is a lot just on the left as you enter Fletcher Steel that is not developed.
Right.
I don't know specifically whether that remains available to be developed, or whether the Corcorans simply set that aside as some green space for the benefit of the neighborhood.
Okay. Those are my only two questions, because it's almost, they're similar parcels, and
Yeah.
they're open, Our Ladies Hall was open the same way Dr. Burt's frontage was, so that was just, this is a first for me, so I had never heard of this before.
By having this around the perimeter of the property, it's helping
Yeah,
with the
for maintaining
streetscape
it, absolutely.
on Highland Street as well.
Especially the historic nature of Highland Street, just as it is.
Yeah, and Judith Kemp, who lives directly across the street and is a member of the Conservation Commission, was really sort of helpful in thinking through where the values were and from a conservation perspective. She talked about a couple of rare owl species that live in the trees. There's some other species that live within the grass area. And I think that helped the Conservation Commission understand that this was a really good value for the town.
I'm familiar with the owl from my time living in that neighborhood for the past 20 years. There was a Clifton Road resident who used to lead kids on these sightings to see these owls. It was amazing. I never even knew what they were. The screech owls, there's quite a few of them up there.
David, did you have any comments or questions regarding this item?
No, I'm fine with it as is.
Okay, thank you. All right, so do we have a motion to
I'm good, I'll
approve
read
and
them.
sign?
I'll make a motion to approve and sign a conservation restriction on behalf of the town of Milton regarding the parcel of 245 Highland Street.
Thank you. And I
Second.
have,
Okay, made and seconded. All in favor? We need to do a roll call vote, Ned. So Chairman Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Yes.
Okay, and rather than having you wait until the end of the meeting, why don't we sign them now, and then you could notarize them if that works for you, Ned?
I have 5 originals. There'll be presumably one for the Burks, one for the board, one for the commission, one for the Secretary of Environmental Affairs, and then one extra to be recorded, or actually one to be recorded.
Okay, so why don't we take a few minutes to sign them, and then we'll give them back to Ned, and he can notarize them this evening. And the next agenda item would be number 12. Mike, you're going to speak to that?
Sure, yeah, just very
Okay,
briefly.
so we'll move on to that while we're trying to get this signed. And this is the transition from 3 to 5 members.
Yeah, so this is a physical undertaking. Bill Ritchie from Consolidated Facilities spent some time up in the Cronin Room trying to solve what we consider somewhat of a conundrum with the size of that room and the board and what can be necessary for chairs and seating. He did a little bit of research. Most other communities, their Board of Selectmen don't sit in a rectangular manner, but more in a semicircle type manner, facing the audience, and not necessarily looking across like myself and Mr. Hajar are. And he found that to be probably cumbersome for the Cronin Room. He has reached out to WB Mason representative to try to possibly come up with a solution to making that room work. But he's also looking at some other alternatives.
Thank
You know, this board has met over at the high school. The high school has a room that's equipped with Milton
Audio
Access TV equipment. It sits in a semicircle type fashion. But so he's basically looking at it from a couple of different perspectives, trying to reposition the Cronin Room to make it more amenable and more conducive for a board that size, as well as taking a look over at the school, at the high school, and see if that room might be a fit as well. So waiting to hear back from WB Mason to see what they can come up with. That rectangular table will have to at least be a little bit longer the way it sits up at the Cronin. That was the preliminary observation as he walked through with us the other day. But I have full faith in Bill that he can come up with something that will physically be able to fit a couple more bodies into the board.
As I told David, I before we start, I toured the Hingham Town Hall today and never expected, I had to go there and take care of a business matter, and so I toured the whole building, and the selectmen's, their 5-member is set up, they're all set up that way. Planning board, ZBA, in that type of, you facing them type of environment. And I can understand why Bill would come to that. I think Braintree's is that, same with their council. It's the same way. So hopefully we can start moving this way, because it's going to be here sooner versus later.
Yeah, I think many other towns are set up that way
Yeah.
for meeting space, especially for a 5-member board. Okay.
So, we'll see what he comes up with. He might be able to come up with a solution for the Cronin Room that works and makes it less congested. And I mean, the sound in the Cronin Room works very well. I think it's a very, very pleasing room.
Right.
A lot of work put into it. I appreciate the room fully. We also have to make it fit for meetings throughout the day as well, because so much business goes on in the Cronin Room daily, so you don't want to take away from that. But we'll see what Bill can come up with. He's actively working on the logistics of the physical makeup of the room going forward.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
More to come quickly, hopefully.
All right, the next item on our agenda is a discussion and approval of the May 2018 annual town meeting articles. And we have a number of articles that have been submitted as unique articles. For this year, we have, of course, always the usual budget articles, other appropriation articles, the first few, the 5 that are always at the beginning of the warrant. So those are usually in the warrant and submitted, but in addition to those, we have 7 that have been submitted by various boards, and we have 2 citizens petitions. So we have copies of all of them that came through. Are they attached? They are attached, yeah. So we have, should we just go through them? We have 2 citizens petitions. One is a citizen petition relating to the town landing and the Milton Yacht Club, and a citizen petition relating to a temporary moratorium on zoning. And we have a number of articles from the planning board, and the one that this board had approved already was the municipal energy aggregation. The town administrator had had some meetings and made a presentation along with an outside consultant on that article at the last meeting. We have this on for discussion as well as approval. I have some concerns with the 2 citizen articles, and with David out sick tonight, on the phone, but not feeling well, I don't know if this is really the appropriate time, but I do think we should schedule them for a discussion so that we can form a position on the citizen articles sooner rather than later. The one that's submitted regarding the yacht club is very concerning to me for a number of reasons, mainly because it relates to the work that the Master Plan Implementation Committee is doing, and it really is something that would greatly impact that. And the yacht club has been at all of the many of the Master Plan Implementation Committee's meetings, and it's basically asking the town meeting to direct the Board of Selectmen to lease the town landing to the yacht club for a 15-year term. And I think as we all know, and as everyone who's been at the Master Plan Implementation Committee, means all the stakeholders know, that needs to be put out for bid. So an RFP process is needed. There's also a role that the Board of Park Commissioners have, but there's an ongoing effort by the Master Plan Implementation Committee, which is advisory to this board and the planning board, to come up with a plan. And we referred the whole matter to the Master Plan Implementation Committee close to 2 years ago now. So this is something that really would impact that, and is almost, geared at stopping or slowing down the work or having an impact that the committee is doing. So it is a real concern to me that this has been submitted. Now, there's a lot of people who have signed this citizens petition, and I don't know if all of them were aware of the fact that there does need to be, we were advised by town council, both our board and the Board of Park Commissioners, that this property will need to go out for bid, because it's been quite a while since it's been put out for bid.
So
Not all of the signatories may be aware of that.
So town council, this is the first I've heard this, so town council thinks that if we do a new lease with the yacht club for the parcel of property owned by the town, that we need to go back out to bid for it again.
Yeah, the lease expired in 2014, and at that point, it had been extended one time previously. So the Board of Park Commissioners is also a signatory to that lease, and the decision was made in 2014 to let that lease expire, keep the yacht club on month to month, but
Right.
go through this process of trying to figure out how do we increase public access down at the waterfront. And then we had a number of things all come up, like the Swift Hat Shop building. There was an effort to
Right,
try to
right,
preserve that. Mike
right.
Roberts wanted to donate it, and then the Friends of the Milton Crew were looking for a dock. So a lot of that kind of came together within a fairly short time frame that had this prior board refer this matter to the Master Plan Implementation Committee for study. So The advice we were given is that an RFP would be required. But in any event, this is a citizen's petition. It's, assuming that all this, the 10 signatures have been certified, it goes into the warrant. But at some point, and I think sooner rather than later, often we let the process play out and don't form a position as a board on something until the end of the process. But in this case, the warrant committee is going to want to hear from us, I think from the planning board, probably from the master plan implementation committee, on how exactly this would impact the work that's ongoing, and that we have MAPC involved in
I
working
know that.
on.
What would be, why do we not look at just, there's a way around this. Why don't we put out like an RFI and see what, for that lease, and see what we get back, and then depending on that, then put out an RFP.
Well, we've talked about that, but the whole purpose of the study that MAPC's been doing has really been to try
Right,
to
right.
decide what are the priorities for the area, what might we want to recommend as an option. So the committee's going to be coming in at some point and making a presentation to us and the park commissioners as to what the recommendations that MAPC and the committee had are
So
for
I
that.
think part of the reason they're doing this is because I think they get the feeling, and I'm sure you got the same letter I got, they get the feeling that the Master Plan Implementation Committee and us is them, we're going to try and force them out. I have no intention to do that. I mean, they've been there for, I mean, they're part of the history of, I think that there's a lot of support behind them. I do agree with you, though, Katie, we need to, in the work you're doing there, that, and I've been a big advocate, that's a jewel, and we need to make it, be smarter and make it better versus completely changing it. But, you're right, I don't know how that,
The boat storage is the big issue
I
there,
get that,
and
I get
that's
that.
that's the big concern. But
and that, again, I think we could do better for everyone, for everyone's uses, crew, for public access, for the members of the yacht club. I just think we could do a lot better job with this. Now, we have to let this go forward, right? It's
yeah,
citizen
the article
petition,
goes
it
forward.
goes forward
But
automatically.
the warrant committee is going to want to hear from the various boards that are involved, and probably sooner rather than later, as to what our positions are and what's going on here, what the history is, what's driving this. And I wanted to be clear for the record, the yacht club the leadership of the yacht club has been at many of the master
I know
plan
that, I know
implementation
that.
committee meetings, so they know what the process is and what we're working towards. I also have concerns about the second citizens petition, which would be a moratorium on zoning changes, because we have some very important
Right,
projects.
right.
Number one would be the Falcone project that we're already looking at potential zoning for, and the East Milton Neighborhood Association has expressed an interest in working with the planning board on overlay zoning. We also have the master plan committee working on the Milton Village zoning.
Right.
So all of that would be impacted by a moratorium, and there's considerable work being done through the master plan implementation committee, and there will be on the Falcone project. So, I think this is one that we're going to have to take a position on sooner rather than later.
Is the, on the second one there, has there been correspondence to the planning board as well on this?
On this one, the moratorium?
Yeah.
I don't know if this has been sent over to the planning board. But
I'm sure they would have
The warrant only
understood-
closed
I
last
know.
night, so I think it just came in recently. So we received it yesterday or today. But, yeah, so these will go now to the warrant committee and to the planning board and the other
Okay.
interested boards. And then we have a number of articles that the planning board has submitted, including an amendment to the Ice House zoning article, temporary signs, and a zoning map amendment. They've also put forward one to establish a traffic study revolving fund. That's one that we had put forward last
Right,
May at their
right,
request.
right.
So I don't know if they've done additional research or work on this, but they're resubmitting it at this point as a planning board article.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
do we want to make a motion to,
So I'll make
include
a
these in the
motion to
warrant?
approve the following articles for inclusion on the May 7th, 2018 annual town meeting warrant. And this is to amend Chapter 10 of the general bylaws, which is the Ice House zoning amendment. Again, to amend Chapter 10 of the general bylaws, which is the topic regarding temporary signs. Amend Chapter 10 of the general bylaws, specifically zoning map amendment. Next one is to establish a traffic study revolving fund. The next one is a municipal energy aggregation. And the two citizen petitions, one is a lease of town landing to the Milton Yacht Club, and the second one is a moratorium on the zoning bylaw changes.
Second.
Okay, and it just, I think, Emily, you started to say at the beginning of the meeting that either the town clerk has certified the signatures or,
I haven't
Or
got
has-
the official memo back from her on them.
Okay.
So it's kind of contingent upon that.
contingent upon the town clerk. Do you want to add that to the motion,
Yeah,
contingent upon the
so,
town clerk?
Then I'll add to this one, contingent upon certification by the town clerk on the 2 citizens petitions. Am I correct? Is it 10? Am I right?
Yes, 10. Okay.
Okay, I'll second that.
David has seconded the motion. So any discussion, further discussion?
Just, do you want any type of amendment on us having a future discussion on these two? Do you want me to make any?
I think we can at any time, once,
All right, so you're okay with, okay.
yeah,
so you
because
don't
then they're
want me to add
included in the
anything.
warrant, and
Okay,
they'll go to the
okay,
warrant committee,
all
but
right,
we'll just,
okay.
we can have a discussion at any future
Okay.
date.
Okay,
Okay, if no other discussion, then Chairman Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
yes.
and myself, yes. All right, item number 14 is the town administrator's contract. And at a previous meeting, we had discussed extending the contract by, what turned out to be by a year, to basically start a new 3-year contract, rolling in anticipation of the board expanding to 5 members and ensuring stability in town management and financial management. And I know the town administrators had some discussions with other key town employees, such as the town accountant, to make sure that those contracts are in place and ensures just stability in operations of town government, given that we're going to be having some changes at the board level. And we had also, at our last meeting, we had an executive session where we approved the salary increase for the town administrator. Chairman Burns, I know you're sick. Do you want to speak to this? I think maybe it might be better to have you speak to that if you'd like.
Yeah, I do want to speak to that, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Katie. Last meeting, we met in executive session, and we agreed to, by way of performance, extend Town Administrator Dennehy another year, and to make it a continual now 3-year contract. At his request, we actually were going to look to give what was given to all department heads a 2.5% raise, but at his request, to his credit, he only wanted to take a 2% raise. He felt that was financially responsible, and our board agreed to that, and we want to commend him for looking long term and understanding the finances of the town, and greatly appreciate his leadership. He's earned this. He's proven to be a quick study, and I believe that he's a tremendous asset to the town of Milton, and I think that's why we as a board decided to extend him another year to keep that a 3-year contract. And in doing so, I think it's important as the board goes from a 3-member board to a 5-member board to have that continuity. And, he's really ingrained himself into the budget process, along with, our town accountant, Amy Dexter, and working well with the warrant committee. And, I can't say enough about the work that he's done, and the residents that have approached me personally about the way the town is being run is a real credit not only to him but his department heads and every employee that works together in the town of Milton. And I think that all starts at the top. So I think we were unanimous. We were unanimous in our decision to go this route.
Okay, thank you. I want to agree also that I think it is great leadership by the town administrator to state that he's not looking for 2.5% increase, wanted us to only do a 2% increase, even though a lot of the other department heads did receive a 2.5% increase. So thank you, Michael, for that leadership.
So I'm going to go one step further, and as I said this in executive session, I appreciate your humility and leadership, because it takes leadership. I always talk about great leaders are selfless, because it's easy in life to be selfish. But that 0.5%, we're going to put it away somewhere so that if the day comes that we think you need it, we're going to give it to you, whether you want it or not. I'm the newest member here, but as you know, I spent all of my professional career working for this town, and you have a great style, you have a great way with people, you're approachable, affable. When you can't figure out a problem, you find a way to do it. From as recently as just the amount of snow we're dealing with this past week, you've been there I know you like snow, I know, I know you are, but you've had a great way about you, and you've been great to all of us, and we are lucky in this community to have you here, and you make being on this board much easier by your presence, and so I'm happy to vote for this for you. So you want me to read a motion?
Yes.
So I'll make a motion to approve and assign a contract for the town administrator, Michael Dennehy, effective July 1st. This is an extension, 2017, carried through till June 30th of 2020. And for those who are at home, go ahead,
Has been seconded. Good.
is that 3 is the most we can give, because if we could give 5, I would be voting for a 5-year contract for you.
I appreciate all the kind words I can say. And in the 13 months I've been here, I've never been happier in government. I inherited a very good ship, the department heads that diligently worked through the town under extreme conditions like we saw last Thursday, or just the most mundane stuff, the stuff that goes on day to day in this building that people don't see behind the curtain. So I'm very thankful to be here. And I'm very thankful that you took the initiative to extend the contract 1 year. I really, really like my job. Husband, father of 5, live in the town for 11 years. I'm not going anywhere, and I really appreciate everything this board has done for me, and just working with the town, the people both that work for the town, people like Emily that work in the office every day, Barbara, right down the list. I could name everyone, but it's very happy to be here, and I appreciate the extension.
And it's a birthday present. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Yep.
It's your birthday.
49 years young. There you go. Coincidentally. Yep.
Yeah, and maybe we should mention, we left off the agenda that we're supposed to do an annual review for the town administrator, so we'll have to do that at a future date. So I
Okay.
agree with all the sentiments, and thank you, Michael, for all of your service
you.
and all of the good work during the past year.
We have to vote.
Yes, so that's been seconded, and we'll have to do a roll call vote. So all in favor, Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, number 15 is
Congrats.
settlement of litigation regarding National Grid. And this relates to damage that was done by gas leaks to shade trees in the town. It goes back a number of years, and the attorney representing the town, which is not town council's firm, a different firm, but it has recommended settlement in the amount of approximately $43,000, which is obviously is a compromise of what the town's initial claim was, but it's recommended, and a number of other towns have already accepted the settlement.
This is the Brookline, goes back to Brookline was the
Yeah, there
initial
were 5
filing, right?
towns involved: Nahant, Brookline, Hingham, Milton, and Saugus. Milton gets 19% of the settlement, less attorney's fees. Attorney Slickman had called a couple times looking for our approval. Obviously, this board needs to sign off on that. It's roughly $43,000 check that will be deposited into the treasurer's account. I believe it goes into the general fund.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's any way we could try to encumber it for shade trees, because we're trying to raise, we're trying to make sure we budget money in future years for shade trees. I don't know if there is, but it's something we could look into, whether there's some way we can earmark it.
$43,000 is what the Capital Improvement Committee put in for a number for trees this year, so.
$43,000?
Right, so coincidentally, this would be a matching offer if you would, but I think that's a great idea.
Someone had some real premonition of
Could we
this.
do this? Is there a way we could do it?
We'll have to
You wanna
look
look
into
and
it.
see?
Look
Yeah.
into it, but
See how the money's handled, but.
But at least this settlement is, this number is worth bringing to the attention of the warrant committee to make the case for the $43,000 for the trees.
Sounds good. I'll make a motion.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the settlement of Norfolk Superior Court Consolidated Number 10 Charlie Victor, 2004, Town of Milton versus National Grid, in the amount of $43,032.60.
And I'll second the motion.
Second.
Okay, seconded by, any further discussion?
No.
And all in favor? Chairman Burns?
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And Ms. Conlon, yes.
Yes.
Number 16 is a Forbes House Museum grant proposal support letter to approve tonight. The Forbes House Museum has asked us to support their application to the Massachusetts Cultural Council for a grant. And the Forbes Museum drafted this letter for us.
Right, I saw that. I'll make a motion that we endorse that.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve and sign a letter of endorsement for the Forbes House Museum's grant proposal to the Massachusetts Cultural Council.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And myself, yes. And we have an acceptance of a grant, or rather a donation to the Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition.
So I'll make a motion to accept the donation in the amount of $200 to the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition, also known as MassPAC, from Melissa A. Fontaine in honor of the Jessen family in memory of Michael Jessen.
Second.
Any discussion?
No, thank you.
Thank you, yes. All in favor? Chairman Burns?
Yes.
And Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Next, we're on to a discussion of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Michael, would you like to
Sure,
speak
yeah.
to
So
this?
I mentioned at one of the previous board meetings, I think it's time to reconvene this committee. It was established in September of 2011. Worked very diligently to get the town to the two-day trash contract in 2014. I think that's working well. A lot has changed in the solid waste and recycling industry since then. So I just thought it would be a good idea to reconvene that group with the same charge that they had before. They were one-year appointments, so these terms have expired. A lot of the people who were on that previous committee, there were 9 members. I would advocate for 9 members as well as an advisory committee to this board. As we have about a year and a half left, just under a year and a half left in the current contract, that we try to, make sure that we're doing the right thing when it comes to trash and recycling, because it can be such a financial burden on a town as things fluctuate in recycling markets and the dependency on cardboard and foreign countries to demand our recyclables. You can see a big sway in the delta between what we throw away and what we recycle. So I think if we can stay ahead of this, I think the recycle carts will help. But I think the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, I know, Katie, you had mentioned the Sustainable Milton member might be interested. I spoke to Mr. Driscoll, who does so
Right.
much and sees so much in the town. John Driscoll does so much in the town. He'd be willing to get on the board,
Good.
the committee again. I would be willing to sit on it.
I told you I'd do the same thing. I'd sit
Yeah.
on it as well.
So I don't think we'd have a tough time coming up with 9 people, and I was thinking of maybe coming up with those names and maybe running that through the mill on the 29th so we could get started, and when spring gets here, it's probably going to be a 6 or an 8 month committee, and the bids will most likely go out in April, about 15 months' time, so slightly up against the clock, but.
I'm glad to hear, Richard, you're willing to do it. I did it the last time. I
Oh, no, I'm glad to
think
do it.
Dennis Cohen and Tom Hurley recommended me, or nominated me for it because I was the new member, but
Yeah.
I learned a lot from it. It was a
This is-
very interesting
People
committee
have
to
no
serve on.
idea. We talk about this all the time, how important trash is. I mean, imagine just 1 week
Yeah.
where our trash doesn't get picked up. Just take 1 week of a year.
Yeah, I
Just-
mean, we had some hiccups Thursday with
Right,
that we made a
right.
decision to try to get them out there early and, get as much as we can, and then, obviously 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon came around, and the snow was flying 2 or 3 inches an hour, and there was a decision made, for safety purposes, to get those trucks off the street and get back out there the next day. We actually received more complaints or requests to Public Works for missed trash than we did for snow and ice control.
Yeah, I could
We
see
got
it.
17 inches of snow, so it's important. It's quality of life stuff, and I think if we get this right, then, it can be a financial,
Is there any community that you know of where, like, people have to pay for recycling as well, or no? Have you ever heard of that?
not that I know of,
No.
no.
Just solid waste?
Yeah, solid waste. There are communities that are going towards solid waste every other week and recycling every week to try to promote
Really?
recycling more. I don't know how well that is going, but, yeah, there's some ways to do things in the industry that I think it's worth taking a look at.
I think the containers are gonna be big.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it'll be a big, I really
Yeah,
do.
and I think that the contractor in town has done a great job. The idea of getting trash on a Wednesday and Thursday. They have their hands full during yard waste season, like all contractors do. It's just the fall is a tough time. And then when you have Thanksgiving that Thursday and you try to compact everything to that one day, something like that we might have to look at and refine. But I think there's some things out there in the last 4 years that have changed in the industry and it'd be worth taking a look at.
One of the things, when I was on it 4 years ago, that we talked about and that we actually got done was some textile recycling, so that now all the schools have the textile recycling bins where there's an outside company that
Right.
comes, collects it, and it removes all of that material from the
Very heavy
the solid
material,
waste stream.
yeah.
So
Really?
it's a good program, and anyone who's watching, if you have old towels, clothing, shoes, pocketbooks, I mean, any of that can be, if you just put them in a plastic bag, or any kind of bag, I guess, and just put them in, but it does have to be in a bag. You can't just throw individual items into the bins. Put them in the bins that are at the schools. The schools have a little bit of a competition where they each make some money from it,
Right.
but it does remove it from our solid waste stream, so it saves some money through the DPW budget as well.
Great. Yes, I'm thankful you.
No, I'll be glad to
wanna
do that.
join
I'll be
yeah.
glad to do that.
Great. So I don't think we'll have a tough time coming up with 9 names, so.
Okay, the next item, David, did you have anything else for that?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, number 19 is appointment to the Historical Commission. And we had a previous discussion at the last meeting about this appointment. We had 2 candidates that we were considering. We were going to look into whether we could appoint more than 7 people to the Historical Commission, which we did. There is a statute that caps the number at 7. Does allow for some alternate members to be appointed. And that's not, I asked Steve O'Donnell if that was anything that we've ever done in the past, and at least to his recollection, it has not been. But it's certainly something we could explore if we wanted to appoint more than 1 member to this committee.
Do you want a motion?
Sure.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Ellen Ancelone of 22 Morton Road to the Historical Commission to serve through September of 2020.
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion?
I just want to say, we talked about this a lot. I think for all of us, I think we appreciate people wanting to come forward. I do want to say several residents emailed me about Miss Ancelone, which made this decision much, I didn't really know either one of them, and I thank them for that. And again, I thank anybody who wants to come forward to give her their time to this community, so.
Yeah, I'd like to add that both are incredible candidates, and both would be equally worthy of sitting on this commission. It's always a pleasure to have multiple people who are qualified to want to sit on boards or committees. I too had an awful lot of people reach out to me, and I think that Ms. Ancelone's credentials as an architect with a background in historical preservation would add increased value, I think, to the commission. So I think that not being able to add more than 1 member, that makes most sense for this time.
I agree.
I agree as well. Do we want to explore at all the idea of the alternate member? What does everyone think?
You want to talk to Steve and see what he thinks? Oh, you already did. You already did talk to.
He just said it hasn't been done before. And, at one point, the Town Government Study Committee a few years ago tried to propose it for the planning board, and there was real opposition on the
I get
planning
you.
board to
Okay.
that.
All
But there's always, we could try it on a trial run basis, or we have some other committees that are looking for people as well. And I agree, Mr. Culver has some good qualifications and would also be a good candidate for either the Historical Commission or another committee.
I agree.
If he were so interested.
I agree. I'm fine with that. However you.
Yeah, I'm fine with it as well.
Okay, so we have a motion that was made and I believe was seconded.
Ready to
So
vote.
any further discussion? Then Mr. Chairman Burns
Yes.
and Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And myself, yes. All right, we're on to the Town Administrator's report.
Thank you, Selectman Conlon. Couple of notes, some scheduling stuff. Solarize Milton will be at the library Thursday night in the Keys Room at 7 o'clock. This is the Solar Flare Energy Group who won a competitive request for proposals to provide residential solar panels in the town. There is a slightly time-sensitive. Those that wish to participate, be it businesses or homeowners, they need to apply before May of 2018. So this is an informational gathering over at the library. They will, I think the first test is to get your information. Do you want to lease them? Do you want to buy them? There's certain financing plans involved, and there's savings. So basically, it's solar electricity on your home, which can reduce historically 15-20% of your electricity bill. This was a competitive RFP. Representatives from Solar Flare will be at the library Thursday at 7 to go over logistics. Obviously, can your roof handle solar panels? Is it facing in the right direction? Stuff like that. So basically, it's guidance for residents or business owners in town who would wish to apply.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Thursday night. Today is National Law Enforcement
I
Appreciation Day.
did know that. I
Chief,
didn't know that.
thank you, we appreciate it.
I thanked my wife this morning.
But and Ms. Wells.
She
yep.
texted my daughter and thank her.
But, so Thursday, I was out in the storm, and I happened to have a police radio in Tom McCarthy's vehicle that he lent me. And the stuff that they had to deal with on Thursday, as the snow was flying, it was, I mean, I've been in operations 25 years. Some of the stuff that they had to deal with, the flooding on Granite Ave, the amount of vehicles that were stuck. So there were some people in a lot of need, and there were some pretty pressure situations that I heard on the radio. Some probably comical now, not so comical at the time, where people, lost some keys in snowbanks and stuff like that. But just the professionalism, Fallon Ambulance, Milton Police Department, Milton Fire Department, Fire Auxiliary, Lieutenant Caputo and his group and what they do in the emergency center. So it was impressive to watch. I mean, it was a pretty significant storm, and just to hear on the radio what goes down, it's a look behind the curtain again. But it was impressive. I told the chief, Sergeant Murphy, and the group that was on during the day shift, when I heard most of the commotion going on, they really need to be thanked for their work. It's sometimes
good
it's
job.
very unsung. So it would be National Law Enforcement Day to appreciate them, but I think they should be appreciated every day for what they do for the town. Christmas trees be collected tomorrow and Thursday. Try to put them in an accessible position. No tinsel, no ornaments, no plastic bags. They need to be free in order to be recycled properly. They do get chipped and then repurposed. It's, again, stuff that we're not paying $78 a ton to get rid of. So that's tomorrow and Thursday on your respective day. The FY18 stormwater bills were mailed out Monday. People should be receiving them if they have any questions. Alan Bishop filled out a form today that people can go online and submit a form. We would appreciate them doing it that way. They're also allowed to call the yard. We don't frown upon that, but in collecting the data, the better way to collect the data is to fill out a form online if you could. Go to the Public Works website on the town website if they have any questions about the bill. Monday, obviously, Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. I know there's some celebrations planned. President Fernandez from the hospital.
I'll attend. I will attend that one.
Celebrating our diversity and building cultural competence week. It looks very interesting. And a special guest lecturer next Monday happens to be his father, Reverend Richard Fernandez, who has a first-hand account of his experience working with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. So
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. I think I might go to that as well.
yeah, they have a full week of stuff. You can find it on BID Milton. We'll post this on our website. But I know last year we attended the up at the church on Blue Hill Ave.
Concord Baptist.
Concord
That's again. They're
Baptist.
having
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
again. They're having that again
Yeah.
on Monday night.
In fact, we should post a notice of a meeting because I
Because we're all
believe all
going,
of us
yeah.
will be there. And
Okay.
it will have to, David will have to read the proclamation, so we'll need to prepare that.
David, take some lozenges.
Hopefully I'm much better by then.
That was a great event last year.
They do it every year.
Yeah. And the only other thing I have is I got a note that baseball night in Milton, the Milton Babe Ruth and Strike 3 Foundation are having an event at Florian Hall on Tuesday, January 30th at 6 p.m. Milton's own Rich Hill will be there in attendance. Great fundraiser on behalf of Babe Ruth. Mike Whitaker. We'll post a link to it, but I think it's going to be a great night. A lot of the young baseball players in town. I know opening day is quite a ways away with all the snow that's on the ground, but I think this would be a really good night. And obviously, we appreciate Rich Hill, everything he's done from the town's perspective and for the town. And I think it would be a great night for everyone to get out and support Milton's Babe Ruth.
I agree.
It'll be great for the kids to
Yep.
meet him as well, yes.
So we'll post that online and give people information as to how to purchase tickets. But again, that's Tuesday, January 30th at 6 p.m. at Florian Hall.
Good.
Good.
That's about it.
You sure?
So far, yeah.
It's been a busy week.
Yeah, it's been
It's been a busy week.
Yeah. I didn't know there were as many sidewalks in the town
Oh, yeah.
as there are, right? So if usually you take your lane miles and multiply it times 2, that would be about 200 miles of sidewalks. So a lot of work a lot of great work done. Consolidated Facilities and DPW, they've been working nonstop. We cleared the snow around all the schools, which is a large undertaking, and just trying to get the community back up and running with 17 inches of snow. Takes a little bit of time, so I appreciate everyone's
Yeah.
patience, but you know, great work all around, and touch wood, everyone, no injuries, everyone was safe, and you know, we got through it, and we'll see what happens when the rain comes on Friday.
It was nice to see that, from the DPW perspective, operationally, the investment in infrastructure, the new equipment, made a big difference in their ability driving, you know, brand-new, state-of-the-art, 21st century equipment versus some of the older equipment that they've been plagued with for so many years. So it was very obvious in both the salting and sanding operations and in their plowing operations that, you know, everything from Bill's guys, the Bobcats, the sidewalk machines, and as much as people don't understand how many miles of sidewalks we have, and they don't understand the priorities, the hills, the temperature drop, the things that, the challenge is just, it's not as easy as just going out and shovel, removing some snow. There's a lot to it. And Milton makes its own weather. You've got two aspects. You've got East Milton on the coast, and then you go up towards Big Blue. People don't understand that it could be raining on Granite Avenue and coming down sideways on Blue Hill Avenue at the same time.
Well, yeah, and as everyone said, thank you to the DPW and the
Right, great
police
job.
and the fire and the facilities, all of them, but also Michael D. was the leader of the whole team, so I thought it was a good response and good work. We have gotten some emails from people who, you know, want to see if we can impose fines on people for not shoveling sidewalks, and there was an effort, there was an attempt a long time ago to
Town meeting.
consider that, and that really was, it was controversial. There were people who were opposed to that, but this was really one of the more difficult storms. I mean, you know, just the amount of snow that we got in a short duration and the very heavy nature
Right.
of the snow. For a lot of elderly people, that's very tough to
It is.
shovel. And the town sidewalk plow does the main roads, but can't get to all of the sidewalks on all of the side streets. So it's something that, you know, we ask people to do as much as they can, but I live on a main road, you
Right,
still live on the
right,
same
right,
road on the
right.
other end, and the plows are down the main streets so frequently, they're constantly dumping snow into the sidewalk, into the driveways, it's not easy. So, you know, I understand the concerns and the complaints that we receive, the
Right.
people asking what more can we do about sidewalks, but if a storm that has 3 or 4 inches of snow, that's
One
easy,
thing,
but this was a difficult storm.
Yeah, and in my history in Boston, they came up with a fining system, and quite honestly, it was not to fine people punitively, but to incentivize them to shovel their sidewalks. That was not accomplished in Boston, right?
No.
It's hard, right? What we saw was people repeatedly getting, right? The idea is to fine someone so that they'll shovel it and not get fined again. What we saw was repeat offenders. The $25 ticket didn't really incentivize anyone to shovel their sidewalks, so it was just over and over and over again. It was almost like Groundhog Day at some point in time. But the fining system, it's hard to execute operationally, and it's even harder to get people to actually pick the shovel up unless you're fining them hundreds of dollars. You know, it's not the incentive's not really there to do it. So.
And there are people who shovel the sidewalk, and then this plow came down the street again
Oh.
and filled it back in, so that it's, you know,
Yeah.
That's a
there's
complaint.
so many cases of that happening. It's
And this is
Not
no,
easy.
this type of snow cover, and I'll be honest with you, so I can't count how many residents, not just in this storm, but in so many storms that I've seen out with their own machines, you know, doing sidewalks. And for me, and my brother owns a snow, so I never had one. I went out 5 or 6 years, maybe even 7 years, and I drove up there, I'm like, give me the biggest machine. And I take pride in doing as much of the sidewalk, and it's contagious, so many people, because there are seniors, there are people who just, these are the type of snowstorms that will, like, they'll take your life. You know, I can't remember how many times someone had a heart attack shoveling snow and died. So I understand the complaint, like Katie said, but these are storms that really challenge the community, and it's difficult, and it takes a collective effort. And I watched, as you know, I've watched these operations closely. I was out the whole, we talked, I don't know how many times that day. They were very proactive. They were on top of it. They had the heavy equipment in here quick. They weren't looking for it. They were, big machines right away. You did a great job. You and Chase both, you know, all of you, everybody, they did a great job. The DPW, fire, police, Chuck, the LEPC, the auxiliary fire guys who do it for free. come out and give people rides and their four-wheel drive equipment, just,
Yeah.
that says a lot about a community,
Yeah.
you know?
I will ask people to continue to engage with DPW and Town Hall. We had a couple phone calls today. There were some dangerous crossings near
But I
some
gave
of
you
the
a couple
schools.
last
Yeah,
night, right?
that I think, you know, with the constituency reaching out to Town Hall and DPW, we got to them today. We wish we could have got to them sooner, but I appreciate the engagement by the residency to, you know, ultimately want to make sure that all the kids are getting to school safely and that people can traverse through our business districts and the businesses can flourish even with 17 inches on the ground. So if you see something, you know, the answer might be, we can't get that, or we'll try to get that tomorrow, but please continue to engage.
Hopefully, a lot of it will melt over the next couple of days, right?
And the amount of rain that we're looking at for this weekend, you know, people need to clear on their gutters and their downspouts if they can, because this is going to melt quickly, if not just the warmth, but the heavy amount of rain we're forecast to get later in the week.
All right, David, did you have anything for your Cheers report?
No, not tonight.
Okay. Reports, Richard?
Go ahead, Kit. I just want to give a shout out to, you know, people talk about in the police department, you know, the officers, the men and women, they do a great job, but there are a few people behind the scenes in the civilian staff that very rarely get recognized, and one of them, who's been there since I was a teenager, retired on Friday, which was Jean Ennis, who was the records clerk. Actually, Emily was there. They had a nice little thing for her. And Jean came to the police department. I was just out of high school when she first came in as a records clerk, and she was there for God knows how many years. And when she left for a little while and came back, she had kids, her daughter Dee and his son Danny. Danny was with the DPW for a while. Dee was an unbelievable soccer player, went to Milton High, was captain there, went to my alma mater, BU, was captain of the girls' soccer team that was drafted and played professional girls' soccer, and then she came back and married her sweetheart, Pat Lovett, and they have many children. You can see them at
Children later.
at every event or at everything, but Jean Ennis, called Miss Jean by many of us, who included my own father, who she worked for, a fixture within that department. Had many challenges in her life. You know, had polio as a young kid, disabled, on crutches her entire life, and tough as nails. And I know it was a tough day for her to leave, but she'll be missed. But this is a well-deserved retirement for her and Billy, and I'm glad to see that for her. I told her, your love on the check comes every month.
Nice.
So I just want to give her a congrats. It was, she was a big picture over there for so many chiefs for so many years. So congrats to her on her
That's
retirement.
nice. Congratulations to Jean, and best wishes in her retirement. I don't have any report tonight. Citizen speak response, we did not have a citizen speak tonight. Future agenda items.
That one there, that we want to go back to the two citizens petitions.
Citizens
This is-
petitions,
Yeah,
articles.
we'll present the revenue numbers, myself
budget.
and the town accountant.
Okay.
Broadband committee appointments, solid waste advisory appointments, and then my annual review.
Okay, yep.
I'm
If we
sure
come up
there'll
with
be
anything
others.
else in the meantime, we'll let Michael and Emily know outside of the meeting. Okay, that is the end of our public agenda, so I will move that we enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property, 0 Central Avenue, consider the conveyance of property in the adjoining parcel, and strategy with respect to litigation, update from town council, believing that having such discussions in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating or litigating position of the board, and to return to open session to adjourn. And just note, after that, we have an executive session relating to the Governor Stoughton Fund trustees. So Chairman Burns
Yes.
and Mr. Wells.
Yes?
And myself, yes. So we're now in executive session.
Thank you.